Imagine a medieval battlefield. The screams have fallen silent, and the victors collect macabre trophies, the severed heads of the defeated. But what if these heads began to speak? They prophesied the future, sang songs, warned of danger, and even traveled for miles, carried by the decapitated bodies of saints, from Celtic warriors to Christian martyrs. Everywhere stories appear of heads that refuse to fall silent even after death. Why did so many cultures attribute the ability to speak to severed heads? What does this tell us about the beliefs of our ancestors? We'll tell you all about this in this podcast. Let us know in the comments what you think of this material. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Ireland, 11th century. In a monastic scriptorium, a monk records words that sound like something from a nightmare. He describes the Battle of Allen, where King Fergal died. According to the chronicle, the king's head was severed and then washed with water from a holy spring. And then it began to speak, answering questions, delivering prophecies, warning of threats. For medieval Irish people, there was nothing absurd about this. On the contrary, it was a natural extension of their beliefs about the nature of the soul and the power of the human head. In the Book of the Yellow of Lecan, we find an even more moving story. During the Battle of Dowd Bow, a young warrior was killed and beheaded. His head not only retained consciousness, it also retained loyalty. It continued to sing battle songs and refused to pass into the hands of anyone other than the one to whom it had sworn allegiance in life. These beliefs were not limited to Ireland. In the Welsh Mabinogion, royal heads served as oracles, guided companions, and indicated burial sites. The head of the legendary King Bran the Blessed accompanied his warriors for many years, conversing, laughing, telling stories. Only when it was buried in London, according to legend where the Tower of London stands today, did its protective power extend over all of Britain. For the Celts, the head was the seat of the soul, the source of power, the center of life. That's why severed enemy heads were hung at entrances as protection, stored in temples, and consulted on matters of the future. Druids approached the skulls, burned incense, sang incantations, and asked questions, believing they received answers. When Christianity arrived in Europe, the motif of the speaking head was adapted in a Christian context, becoming part of the hagiography of Holy Martyrs, Paris, 3rd century. The Roman governor orders the execution of Bishop Denis on Montmartre Hill. The sword falls, the head drops, but according to the Golden Legend, the body rose, bent down, picked up its own head, and set off on a journey. For 6 kilometers the saint walked, while his head preached a sermon. He reached the place where he wished to be buried, fell there, and later the Abbey of Saint-Denis was built. This story became so popular that Saint Denis is always depicted holding his own head. This motif, known as cephalophory, became a symbol of martyrdom and faith stronger than death. The Golden Legend also describes Saint Paul. When the Roman executioner beheaded him, the apostle's head bounced 3 times, each time crying out, "Jesus Christ," 50 times in all. In the places where it touched the ground, springs of holy water gushed forth. In England, St. Osyth, an Anglo-Saxon princess, was beheaded by the Danes. She picked up her head and, carrying it, walked to the monastery chapel where she fell before the altar. In Spain, the head of Saint Ginés de la Jara, thrown into a river, swam to shore on its own at the place where it wished to be buried. But why specifically the head? The answer lies in the belief of many cultures that the head is the seat not only of the mind, but also of the soul, that within it dwells what makes us who we are. Medieval London. After battles, the heads of rebel leaders were displayed on London Bridge. According to chronicles, residents told stories that these heads moved, smiled, sang, and cried out prophecies. For people living in a world full of signs, such stories had deep meaning. They were warnings that even after death, justice could speak. During the 100 Years' War, some commanders consulted with the heads of defeated enemies before battle, believing that the spirits of warriors could impart valuable knowledge. This may sound macabre, but for people of the Middle Ages, it made sense within their belief system. In 14th century Scotland, William Wallace's head was displayed in London as a warning. But according to Scottish chronicles, his head smiled at Scots and threatened the English. The message was clear: the spirit of resistance cannot be killed. This fascination reaches deep into the past. The Greeks knew the legend of Orpheus, whose head floated down a river still singing and became an oracle. The Scandinavians had a myth about the head of Mimir, with which Odin consulted on all important matters. What connects all these stories? The conviction that death is not an absolute end, that something endures. That under the right circumstances, the boundary between life and death can be crossed. These legends were also an attempt to tame death. If a head can speak after decapitation, death loses some of its terror. It becomes transformation, not annihilation. The stories served a social function. They warned of the consequences of betrayal, reminded of the power of faith, and were tools of moral education. Today, we can try to explain them rationally: post-mortem reflexes, propaganda, good stories. But perhaps we shouldn't be too quick with rationalization. These stories survived for centuries because they touch something fundamental: our relationship with death, desires for immortality, faith in something greater. Speaking heads are a bridge between the world of the living and the dead, between history and myth, between faith and knowledge. And perhaps that's why they fascinate us to this day. Thank you for listening to our material. If you enjoy our content, leave a thumbs up, write a comment, and be sure to subscribe to this channel. We thank you in advance for any response.